My husband told his lover the day before he thought I was leaving, "Don't worry, dear, my wife will pay for everything. She's a first-class provider. You just need to bring your perfect body." But when he realized I was gone, he found the house empty and his bank account drained. My husband had vanished from my life, but it was I who had disappeared without a trace. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. You know, as a kid, life was always changing. It felt like I was constantly packing and unpacking boxes. My father was in the military, a career that painted our lives with the broad strokes of new beginnings but never the fine details of a permanent home. We moved so often that home became a feeling more than a place, the smell of my mom's cooking in a new kitchen, the familiar sight of my dad's uniform hanging in a different closet. This lifestyle, it made me resilient, adaptable. But deep down, it also planted a seed, a yearning for stability, for a piece of the world I could call my own and truly plant some roots. I remember being a teenager, sitting on yet another unfamiliar porch, deciding right then and there that one day, I would build something that would last. I'd have my own business. After college, armed with 2 degrees that most people found an odd combination, Arabic and computer science, I did what felt natural. I joined the army. My language skills were my ticket to some of the most volatile regions in the Middle East, where I worked as a translator, a bridge between 2 worlds. It was during that time, surrounded by the raw, urgent need for security, that I really developed an interest in technology that protects people. It wasn't just about codes and firewalls anymore, it was about safety, personal and national. That whole experience, it shaped what came next. It gave me a mission for my post-military life, to use my technical skills to create a secure environment for others. So, after 10 years of service, I finally left the military. My goal was simple and clear: open a computer and security equipment store in the suburbs of Chicago. I had a specific vision. I wanted a spot right between 2 Best Buy stores, near a busy shopping center. A place where people who were serious about their tech and security would come. On the second day of my search, I found it. A perfect, empty storefront with a "for rent" sign hanging in the window, looking a little lonely. As I cupped my hands around my eyes to peer into the dark, vacant space, the door suddenly swung open, making me jump back. I mean, my heart nearly leaped out of my chest. 2 men emerged, laughing at my reaction. "Sorry to scare you," the taller one said with a grin. "We didn't expect a peeping Tom in broad daylight." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Sorry, it was a reflex. Years of training. If I'd had my rifle, I might have put a few holes in you both. And I'd hate to hurt 2 nice gentlemen. The taller man chuckled. "You must be military. Too jumpy for SWAT." He introduced himself as Carl Hughes, the leasing agent. The other man, who was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, stepped forward. "And I'm Arthur," he said, shaking my hand firmly. He had a warm smile and eyes that seemed to take everything in. "I'm the banker for the property owners." "Judith," I replied. "Judy. And yes, I'm looking to rent. Is this space available?" Carl nodded. "It is. Rent's $1,200 a month, plus electricity." My face must have fallen a little. That was at the top end of my budget. Arthur seemed to notice. "What's the minimum lease term?" I asked, directing the question to Carl but keeping an eye on Arthur. 6 months or more, Carl said. I took a gamble. "Carl, I'll pay you $1,000 a month for a full year, all of it up front, right now." Carl's eyes widened. He glanced at Arthur, who gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. "You got a deal," Carl said quickly. He turned to Arthur. "Heck, she might be a good bank customer for you, too." Arthur smiled that smooth, easy smile again. "I believe she might be." He handed me his card. If you need any financing for your new business, I'm your man. Carl went off to get the paperwork, and I turned to Arthur. Well, since you're my new banker, how about you let me buy you lunch? To celebrate my new venture. He looked pleasantly surprised. I'd like that very much. Great, I said, pulling my keys from my pocket. We walked out to my car, a vintage Corvette I'd painstakingly restored. It was my one real indulgence. Why don't you drive us somewhere nice? I offered, holding out the keys. He looked from the keys to me, a flicker of shock in his eyes. I've never driven a manual before. Then I'll teach you, I said simply. He slid into the driver's seat, his focus intense as I explained the clutch and the gears. The car lurched and stalled a couple of times, and the grinding noises made me wince internally, but I kept my face calm and encouraging. He finally got the hang of it, and as he drove us toward a nice Italian restaurant he knew, I saw a look of pure, boyish delight on his face. When we were seated with our drinks, he looked at me, his expression turning serious. Okay, Judith. You have to tell me. What have you been doing for the last 10 years that made you so jumpy back there? I took a sip of my wine. I spent the last decade in the Middle East. U.S. Army intelligence. When an unfamiliar door opens in a place like that, you better be ready to shoot or die. Since I didn't have my rifle, I was about ready to throw my pen at you. I grinned to show I was joking, and he laughed, the tension breaking. Wow. So why the Army? Why a place so dangerous? It's a bit of a long story, I said. I'm an Army brat. Dad was a colonel, Mom was a nurse. I guess patriotism and a bit of wanderlust run in the family. With my degrees, they put me to work as a translator and analyst in action zones. Was it as exciting as it sounds? Did you ever get shot at? He asked, his voice lower now, more intimate. It was more interesting than I expected, I said carefully. And yes. Once. Maybe after our third date, I'll show you my scars. He smiled, a slow, charming smile that reached his eyes. Third date? Do I get a say in that? If you want to see them on the second date, I suppose I can set aside my modesty, I teased back. We had a wonderful lunch. He insisted on paying, saying, it's on the bank. I'm always looking for good customers. As he drove us back, much more smoothly this time, he looked over at me. The guys at the office are going to be so jealous when I pull up in this. Then give them a show, I said. Get out, toss me the keys with a little flair. And he did. He pulled up to the bank, got out with a confident stride, and tossed the keys to me with a wave as he walked inside. He was a natural showman. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was him. So, he said, his voice warm. What time should I pick you up for dinner on Saturday? I smiled. Who is this? I joked. A girl lets a guy drive her Corvette and he already thinks he's got a date? He chuckled. It's Arthur. And I didn't recognize your voice either. 7 o'clock works for me. Dress nicely. I'll be dazzling, I promised. And Saturday night couldn't come soon enough. He wasn't lying. When he picked me up, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. You look dazzling, Arthur, I said, echoing his words. All the ladies at the VFW will love seeing you. He feigned a look of horror. If you take me to the VFW, I'll never see your battle scars. I can show them to you on the second or third date, I countered. No second or third date if you take me there tonight, he laughed. So where are we really going? I have reservations at Capitol Grill, if a good steak works for you, I offered. I love it. Do we have time for a glass of wine at my place first? He asked. Sure, I said. I'd love to see how a successful banker lives. His apartment was nice, but modest. Welcome to my cozy bachelor pad, he said with a laugh. I'm successful, but at an entry level. I'm aiming much higher. I bought this place a couple of years ago, but I'm not putting much into renovations. I'm planning on bigger things. I noticed a diploma from Northwestern on the wall. Finance major. It fit. So you want to be a real estate developer? I asked, remembering our earlier conversation. Exactly, he said, his eyes lighting up. A few years of financing real estate projects from the inside is the best education I could ask for. You learn the business, you make connections. We talked for an hour about his college years and his ambitions. Then we headed to dinner. The evening was perfect. The conversation flowed easily, the food was incredible. At one point, he leaned forward. You never told me how your computer skills came into play in the military. You mentioned being a translator. I decided to tell him a story I rarely shared. My first combat mission in Mosul, it changed everything for me. We raided an Iraqi fighter's house, and my comrades were about to smash some computers they found. Standard procedure. But something told me to stop them. I insisted we take them to the intelligence officer. I described the scene, the G2 officer laughing, calling the computers electronic garbage. I told Arthur how I'd stepped up. Sir, besides being an interpreter, I can operate a computer in Arabic. After that, I continued, I spent hours at a desk, surrounded by high-ranking officers watching my every move. Suddenly, I found it. A letter. It outlined a 3-pronged attack plan for the next morning at 0200 hours. It was their entire battle plan. I got them a map and showed them the enemy's exact routes. Arthur was captivated. What happened? The decision-makers in the room planned airstrikes and artillery fire. They kept it secret, of course. Spies were everywhere. Only the company commanders and above knew about the impending attack until our Air Force struck first. Then we all rushed to our fighting positions. I explained that the rest of the documents detailed weapon hideouts and more attack plans. After that day, I was reassigned. My new job was working with confiscated computers, digging for any piece of crucial information. And that's when I found the motherlode, their bank records. The insurgents were moving millions of dollars through a network of numbered accounts. It was the money they used for everything: weapons, food, bribes, salaries. I felt it was my duty, I told Arthur, my voice low, to disrupt their access to those funds. I had all the information I needed to transfer the money to any bank in the world. But I only knew one account number by heart, my own, in Chicago. I didn't tell him the next part. I didn't tell him how, using my personal, encrypted laptop, I had systematically drained those accounts. How I had funneled millions of dollars into my own bank, and then, realizing the immense risk, had immediately transferred it all to a numbered, untraceable account in Switzerland. It was an act of war, as I saw it. I was cutting off their supply lines. But it was also an act that made me a very wealthy woman. Due to security clearance protocols and a healthy dose of self-preservation, I didn't mention this source of income to Arthur. I finished my story with a lighter tone. And that's why I always joke that I should write a book called How I Defeated the Rebels While Sitting at My Computer Desk. He shook his head in amazement. You are an interesting person, Judith. So, how did you get injured at your computer? Carpal tunnel, he joked. I smiled. Sorry. I don't show my wounds until the second date. But I can do this, I said, standing up. Let's go dancing, and maybe I'll whisper a top-secret story to you on the dance floor. We laughed and drove my Corvette to a club. When I pulled up to his apartment building hours later, he asked, "Would you like to come in?" "Yeah, I'd like that," I said. After a few more glasses of wine, I knew it was time for me to go. Was this date good enough for another one? I asked at the door. Yes, he said softly. I need a second date to see that wound. Okay. I'll call you, I promised. You're not leaving without a reward for a great evening, he said. He pulled me into a hug, then gave me a warm, wet kiss that sent a jolt through me. It was a kiss that prompted me to call him very, very soon. On our second date, after dinner and a jazz concert, he asked again during intermission, "So, will you show me your war wounds now?" "No," I smiled. "Can I wait until we get to your apartment?" He agreed. When we got there, he seemed a little doubtful about my story, so I showed him a picture on my phone of me in my dress uniform, with a purple heart pinned to my chest. His eyes widened. I went out to my car and retrieved a small briefcase from the glove compartment. "Are you proposing tonight?" he asked with a grin. "No, that's for date number 6, I said. "This is my purple heart. Open it. You can see my name and the wound details engraved on the back." He opened the velvet box and read aloud from the back of the metal. "Shell fragment and I, right." He looked up at me, his expression full of concern. He noticed the tiny, almost invisible scar on my eyelid. "How did it happen?" he asked gently. I took a deep breath, preparing for the punchline. "I was making an omelette. A bad egg exploded and shot a piece of shell right into my eye. The official medical report said eggshell shard and so I got a purple heart." He stared at me for a beat, and then he burst out laughing. A deep, genuine laugh that made me laugh too. We talked for hours after that, and by the end of the night, we had become much, much closer. Weeks later, my store was finally ready to open. I hired a wonderful man as my office manager, Walter Black. He was older, in his late 50s, married to a police officer, and had been laid off from Best Buy despite his extensive knowledge. He told me his manager thought he was too old for their target market. I hired him on the spot, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. We were both happy. Life felt perfect. My business was taking off, and Arthur and I were spending more and more time together. It was everything I had ever wanted. Until the day 2 men from the CIA showed up at my store. They flashed their badges and said they wanted to talk. A cold dread washed over me. I thought they knew. I thought they were there to accuse me of looting the insurgents' bank accounts. My mind raced. For the first time in years, I felt that familiar froth of a panic attack rising in my throat. They asked me a strange question. They asked why, whenever they captured enemy offices that I had identified, there were never any funds or financial assets left to be found. I just stared at them, my face a perfect mask of confusion. They didn't accuse me of anything. They just mentioned that recent hacks of rebel computers had revealed complaints about an American ghost looting their bank accounts. They waited for my response. I just shrugged. Then came the surprise. They didn't want to arrest me. They wanted to hire me. They offered me a job as a private contractor, paying me $20,000 a month. And then they laid out the bonus program. The first $500,000 of any funds confiscated from the rebels would stay with me. The rest would go to the CIA. They said they'd found me to be the most efficient operative at hacking enemy computers, and they believed I could recover more from the Iranians than they were paying me, plus my bonus. The implication was crystal clear. If I didn't comply, they might just start an official investigation into who had been releasing insurgent funds all this time. By the time I'd finished my tour in Iraq, I had over $1 million in my Swiss bank account and another $300,000 in Chicago. The CIA wanted me to keep doing exactly what I had been doing, but this time, for them. The only reason I didn't sign up immediately was my growing relationship with Arthur. But when I told him about the offer, he saw the $20,000 monthly salary as too good to pass up. I didn't mention the bonus program to him. I just told him it was a high-paying consulting gig. Since he was always talking about needing to save for his real estate ventures, he urged me to take it. He even suggested he move in with me to help take care of the place while I was away. I was so in love, I thought it was a wonderful idea. I wired my entire apartment with a top-of-the-line security system, equipment from my own store, so I could monitor it remotely. I offered Arthur the use of it and told him I'd cover all the bills. It felt like we were building a life together. We agreed on a schedule. I would spend 3 months in the Middle East and 3 months back in the States. It was a way to avoid burnout and, more importantly, to maintain my relationship with Arthur. My first stop was a meeting at Langley with my new CIA handlers. They saw me as an asset, something more valuable than a computer but less than a predator drone. The rules were simple and brutal. If I screwed up, the deal was off. If someone died because of my actions, they could either liquidate me or take all the funds I had released. It was a high-stakes game. Those first 3 months were a blur of work, hunched over unexplored computers at the command center. The data I pulled was a goldmine for the CIA. I mapped out insurgent squad interactions and even left some money in certain accounts as bait to track their movements. Arthur and I communicated daily on FaceTime. Despite the time difference, our calls were the highlight of my day. They were worth any inconvenience. I also started physical training with the Marines stationed at our compound. Initially, they were wary of this civilian woman in their gym, but once they learned I was an army brat working for the CIA, they accepted me. After that first 3-month stint, I had a debrief with the senior CIA officer in the country. He was thrilled with the timely intelligence I'd provided. He didn't ask about the funds I'd accumulated, and I didn't mention them. "Do you want to stay for another 3 months, or head back to the States and then come back?" he asked. I smiled. "I'm heading back to the States, sir. I'm going to marry the most handsome man in Illinois. In 3 months, I'll return to continue my work. In the meantime, I've trained your raiding parties on what to look for, and I've created a protocol to bypass terrorist defenses. I can access their systems remotely from Chicago now." 2 days later, Arthur's face lit up like a full moon when he saw me at O'Hare Airport. We had waited 2 months for our relationship to settle, and it felt so real, so solid. A week later, I sent him a bouquet of flowers with a note, "You're more handsome than these flowers. Would you join me for dinner at an exclusive restaurant this Saturday? You might want to buy a new suit." The restaurant was actually a penthouse suite at the Hyatt, with dinner served on a private balcony overlooking the city. I'd hired a string quartet to play his favorite music. The bedroom was lined with rose petals. Arthur was speechless. We took a limo to the Hyatt, where the concierge greeted us by name and escorted us to the suite. Arthur practically danced through the lobby, people stared at us like we were celebrities. We had our own waiter, champagne, and the glittering city lights as our backdrop. The dinner was excellent, and the chocolate volcano dessert was perfect. After dessert, I lifted a silver plate cover on the table to reveal a small purple velvet box. His hands trembled, and I saw tears in his eyes. I got down on one knee. He started saying yes before I could even finish my proposal. I had to stop him so I could get my part out. Then I asked, "Arthur, will you be my husband?" He replied, "Absolutely." Our wedding was small. Neither of us had large families. We flew to Savannah, Georgia, for our honeymoon, enjoying the southern charm. Then it was back to our work lives. Arthur introduced me to his social circle of realtors and developers. Life continued in that rhythm, 3 months in the States, 3 months working abroad. On our first anniversary, I asked him if he knew a realtor who could find us a nice house. "What kind of house do you want?" he asked excitedly. "My lovely husband will decide," I said. "The only condition is that the total cost, including furnishings and remodeling, must not exceed $1 million. He was shocked. He worried about how we could afford it, thinking it was some kind of cruel joke. "I have investments you don't know about," I assured him gently. "We can easily afford it. I wanted to make sure you married me for love, not for money." He smiled, called me a sneaky devil, and said it would be a cash deal. Arthur found a great deal with a divorcing couple who needed a quick cash sale. While I was away on my next tour, he managed the entire remodel. We kept in touch via FaceTime, and he'd walk me through the house, showing me the progress. I requested a top-notch security system with hidden cameras and microphones. I told him it was because I'd received a tip that the terrorists were angry about their stolen money and I didn't want to be captured by vengeful enemies. He agreed it was a necessary precaution. I called Walter at the computer store. "Walter, I need the name of the best private investigator in town." "That would be Tom Pappas," he said without hesitation. "He's one of our best clients. Thorough, professional, but not cheap. He buys high-end surveillance equipment from us." "You want his number?" "Yes, thank you," I said. The conversation with Mr. Pappas was productive. He knew exactly what I needed and how to install it discreetly. Most of the electronic equipment in the house was integrated into my personal computer system, allowing me to control everything remotely. Arthur was thrilled with his new home. He seemed to love me so deeply. Without the distractions of dating or a wife who was always away, he focused on building his career, growing his loan portfolio at the bank, and making connections within the local homebuilders association. But then, starting in my 4th year of this arrangement, things began to change. The enthusiastic welcomes at the airport, the ones where he'd run to me and lift me off my feet, they turned into complaints about my luggage. The last 2 times I came home, he waited impatiently in the car, honking the horn. Once, he just texted, "Just take an Uber home." "I'm busy." After 3 weeks back home, the tension was so thick I could barely breathe. I tried to address it. "Honey, you seem distracted. Is there something I can help with? Anything bothering you at work?" "No, I'm fine," he said, his eyes glued to his phone. That short, dismissive answer sounded an alarm in my combat-trained mind. A few minutes later, he looked up, his face cold. "We have nothing in common anymore, Judith. You're away for 6 months a year, and even when you're here, you're always on that computer. What are you, some kind of spy?" I turned off my computer and gave him my full attention. "No, Arthur, I'm not a spy. My work is for the U.S. Department of Defense. I gather information from terrorist computers. It's important for our country." "Well, that makes you boring and uninteresting, and I don't like it," he said flatly. I was stunned. "What can I do to be more interesting?" "I'm open to suggestions." "Knock me off my feet," he demanded. "Make me feel important." "All right," I said, trying to salvage the evening. "Let's go to Vegas and LA for 2 weeks. No work, just us. You choose the shows, the restaurants, the activities. I'll handle the rest." "That sounds like a good start," he said, a flicker of interest in his eyes. "I'll think about it." "What do you want to see?" I asked softly. "I want to see my husband happy." "That's all," I responded. But the next morning, as I started planning the trip, I knew it wasn't about making him happy anymore. It was a tactic. A mission to understand what was really on his mind. Did he have a lover? Who was he spending his time with? After lunch, I had another meeting with Mr. Pappas. I explained my situation. "I need your company to monitor my husband's activities. We can install a tracker on his Audi, and I've already installed a beacon in his cell phone. I'll be out of the country from September 1st to November 30th. I've installed a sophisticated camera system in our house, and I can share access with you. There are rumors of a bounty on my head from Middle Eastern rebels, and I need to ensure my husband's safety." I paused. He doesn't need to know this, to avoid frightening him. Also, I want to know if he's having an affair. It could be a way for my enemies to get to me. I need to be prepared. "Wow," Mr. Pappas said, looking at me with a newfound respect. "You know my business protocol well. I'll do my best to meet your expectations. This will be costly." I understand, I said. I'll transfer the money for the first month. Thank you for your help. Then, I decided to do my own investigation. I started with Arthur's closet. I checked every shoebox, lifted every shelf, and inspected the pockets of all his clothes. I found nothing. Then I noticed a small travel bag in the hall closet, secured with a tiny lock. I opened it with a paperclip. Inside, I found a set of cheap underwear, clothes, and shoes that had been washed several times. It was clear. He was meeting someone, and he was changing into these clothes to do it. Next, I checked the hidden cameras and replaced their batteries. In my office, I noticed the top drawer of my file cabinet had tiny screwdriver marks near the lock. Someone had gone through my tax returns and investment information. They were likely preparing for a divorce, calculating a potential alimony. My offshore and Swiss bank accounts were safe, but the invasion of privacy told me everything I needed to know. He was preparing for a legal battle. I checked my weapon safe. It was untouched. I decided to invite Arthur to dinner that night. I made reservations at his favorite restaurant, left him a voicemail, and sent him a text. I even laid out a new shirt on the bed for him to wear. At 5 p.m., I took a nap, then showered and dressed in my best suit. By 6:15, with no response from him, I checked his cell phone tracker. It showed him at a high-end office building near his bank. I arrived at the restaurant and was seated in a secluded booth. I ordered a bottle of his favorite wine and tracked his location again. It hadn't changed. By 7:20, I ordered soup, feeling the sympathetic looks from other diners as I sat there alone. At 7:30, my phone vibrated. It was Arthur. "Hi, honey, please forgive me, Judy," he said, his voice sounding breathless. My phone died, and I couldn't get my messages. "I understand," I sighed, playing along. "Will you come to my place for dinner? This is for you, since you said I wasn't attentive enough. Are you still waiting for me?" "Yes, Arthur. I just finished a great soup, and my salad is on the way. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'm really, really sorry, Judy," he added. "Great. You'll be here just in time for dessert and drinks," I said. I had just finished a ribeye steak when Arthur burst in, out of breath, his hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled. "I can't apologize enough, Judy. You were trying to make this night special, and I ruined it." "What can I do to make it up to you?" he asked, laying it on thick. "Have you eaten yet?" I asked calmly. "If not, order something while I get dessert. Then you can tell me all about your day." "No, I'm starving." "I heard they have a great triple chocolate brownie here," he said. "Order that, and a scotch on the rocks," I said. I ordered 2 brownies. "So, how was your day?" "Hectic," he said, launching into a complicated story about a mortgage for a shopping center. He claimed the bank thought they were mortgaging 2 buildings, but the borrowers thought it was just one. "Did it take all day?" I asked. "No, it started in the afternoon and went until just now," he replied. "Who is involved in these negotiations?" I inquired. "Why all the questions, Judy?" "It's just another day at work," he said, a hint of irritation in his voice. I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. "After you didn't return my calls and texts, and you embarrassed me by not showing up, I think you owe me a little more than just another workday." "Do you think that's overstepping?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "No, it's not out of line, but I don't like being questioned as if I'm hiding something," he retorted. "Are you hiding something? Or someone?" I probed. "No, I'm not," he snapped back. "Then why are you so defensive?" "I'm just making small talk." Many spouses ask about their partner's day, including who they worked with. But if you think I'm invading your privacy, I won't ask anymore. Let's talk about something neutral. Like the weather. Don't be so smart, Judy, he said through clenched teeth. Okay, I'll play your game, he sighed after a moment, clearly trying to de-escalate. No, I didn't leave the office. They brought us sandwiches, which I hate. That probably ruined my mood and made me grumpy with you. I'm sorry, I snapped. That's okay, honey, I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. I love you, grumpy or not. The rest of the dinner was more relaxed, but I knew he was lying about his entire day. When he went to the bathroom, I picked up his phone. It was 75% charged, completely contradicting his dead phone excuse. At home, he immediately went to take a shower, which was unusual for him. It was a clear sign he was trying to wash away the scent of another person. On the first day of my own investigation, I had learned so much. The most important thing was to keep appearing ignorant. In Illinois, infidelity isn't grounds for a no-fault divorce, so I didn't need proof of his cheating. Irreconcilable differences would be enough. My goal now was to protect my assets. A few days later, Arthur unexpectedly walked into my home office. I was so focused on my screen that I failed to notice his approach. "What are you looking at?" he asked, peering over my shoulder. I was reallocating my investments in my Swiss account. The screen showed a balance of $3,646,624. There was no name, just numbers. If I hid the screen, he'd know I was being secretive. So, I shifted his attention. I'm deciding between Google and Amazon. Any suggestions? He ignored the question, his eyes fixed on the number. Is this your money? Unlike him, I felt the need to be mostly honest. Yes. This is my bank account in Switzerland. It's money I made trading goods while I was bored in Afghanistan. Why don't you transfer that money here so I can spend it? He asked, half joking, half serious. That money stays there to avoid the huge income taxes we'd have to pay if I brought it into the US. The $1 million you spent on this house and the furnishings? That was part of that income. It was my gift to you, I explained. Are there any other accounts outside the US I don't know about? He queried, his eyes sharp. Yes, I admitted. How many accounts? And how much money? He pressed. I smiled a cold smile. You've used your one honest answer for the day. He got angry for a second, but then he jumped into my arms, his mood shifting on a dime. Great. Keep surprising me. I need a Ferrari and a bigger house, he exclaimed. Wait, honey, I said, playing along. I plan to spend that money on us, but we need a plan. We could blow it now, or I could triple it in 2 years. Would you rather have $10 million in 2 years, or $3.6 million now? I'll buy you a new Audi SUV every year, and there's more to come. I love you, and I did all this for you. Yes, I agree, he said with a greedy smile. Good. I'm off to my next appointment. I just stopped by to pick up some papers. See you tonight, love, he said, kissing me quickly before leaving. I was angry at myself for not handling the situation better, but it had turned out better than I expected. Telling him most of the truth felt strangely good. Maybe our marriage wasn't on the rocks. But I had to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. I rented a storage unit and began moving my most personal and professional items there. I backed up all my important computer data onto encrypted drives and packed a go bag with clothes, cash, and essential documents. I didn't want it to seem like I was leaving, just preparing for a strategic withdrawal. The next step was a trip to Langley to see my supervisor. I requested a new identity. The rebels know someone is pirating their funds, I explained. They've put a price on my head. I need a new identity to protect myself and my family. 2 weeks later, I was no longer just Judith. I was also Audrey Connors, complete with a new passport, driver's license, social security number, and work history. I arranged a buy-sell agreement with my loyal office manager, Walter Black. I transferred all the store's assets to him, including $50,000 in cash. Walter, I said, my voice heavy, I have a bad feeling about my next trip to the Middle East. If I don't return, all the store assets go to you. You're buying the assets, not the corporation, so any tax problems will fall on the corporation. The purchase price for you is $5,000. Judith, why are you doing this for me? He asked, his eyes filled with concern. You've been a great friend and business partner. But there's a catch. One day, you may be contacted by a woman named Audrey Connors. If that happens, do whatever she asks without discussing it with anyone. I guarantee you won't be asked to commit a crime. Just do her a favor. She has saved my life several times. Do we understand each other? I understand, Judy, he said, but I wish you wouldn't talk like that. It's bad luck. I'd prefer you come back and we continue working together. That's my wish too, Walter. But I wanted to ensure you're taken care of if something bad happens to me. When I got home, Arthur vowed to be a more passionate husband, and he almost set our mattress on fire trying to prove it. Mr. Papaz's reports found nothing suspicious about his behavior for a while. He often visited a luxury apartment building owned by a woman named Meredith Cohen, spending hours there, but his cover story was always about business meetings. Then, he told me about a big Home Builders Association seminar and convention. He said he'd be home late each night for a week. I saw the convention materials on the kitchen table and asked about the formal dance on Saturday night. Yes, a big dress-up party, he said. Best suit or tuxedo for the men, fancy dresses for the ladies. Spouses are invited. Do you mind if I go with you? I asked. You said I need to have more fun. We haven't gone to a dance in a long time. Arthur wasn't enthusiastic. You don't know anyone, and I'll be busy developing business relationships. You might have to sit alone for an hour, and you don't like that without a computer. Ignoring his snide remark, I said, you want me to change, so I'm changing. I'm trying to be the kind of wife you want. I informed Mr. Papaz about the party. He promised to set up equipment to catch every sound near Arthur's suit pocket. He also gave me a tiny microphone to record my own conversations, to protect me from any misinterpretations. The first 2 nights of the convention, Arthur came home late, but he seemed normal. On Saturday night, I dressed in my best suit and waited in the living room. When Arthur came downstairs, he looked stunning. You look amazing, my dear, I complimented. That suit is perfect on you. He wanted to ride in my newest Corvette. The table reserved by his bank had a great view of the catwalk and the dance floor. 2 couples were already seated. He introduced me as my wife, Judith. One of the ladies remarked, Arthur, I thought you said your wife was a computer nerd. Why are you here with this handsome stud? All eyes turned to Arthur for his answer. He smiled and said, Why don't you tell them what you do, Judy? Tell them about your store and your work every 3 months. I kept my voice even. I own a computer store on Harrison Street, and I go to the Middle East every 3 months to work on computers for the army. I don't think that makes me a nerd. I saw a tinge of annoyance on his face at my calm rebuke. Well, you'll always be my favorite computer nerd, he said, trying to regain control. Now, get us something to drink while I socialize. He left, and I went to get a glass of wine for him and a beer for myself. The line for the free drinks was long. 2 realtor ladies in front of me were chatting. The taller one said, Here comes the most handsome loan officer in town, fishing for clients with his decoy. She was looking at my husband. Look at that blue suit. He worked hard to get both the construction and permanent loans for that new high-rise Meredith is building. Yes, worked day and night. But mostly at night, the shorter one added with a smirk. Did you see the rock on his finger? It's huge. I wonder if his wife knows how much he networks for business development. He says his wife is a computer nerd and is out of the country a lot. Maybe she doesn't mind. Some women like their husbands being entertained by someone else. I didn't hear any more as they moved away. When I got back, Arthur wasn't at our table. I found him in the center of a group of 4 women who were all circled around him like wolves. I squeezed into the circle with our drinks, getting dirty looks. "Here's the wine you asked for, dear." He looked stunned that I had invaded his territory. He introduced me half-heartedly to his friends. A small, creepy-looking woman with too much makeup said, "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Rogler. I'm Meredith Cohen." "Nice to meet you, Ms. Cohen," I said, shaking her cold, limp hand. "I understand you are the real estate queen in town." "Judith doesn't know much about real estate," Arthur interjected, trying to belittle me. "She's in the computer business." "Arthur, computers are for learning things." "That's how I know Ms. Cohen's name," I said, a sharp edge to my voice. The Grinch-like woman, Meredith, replied, "Your husband mentioned you are a shrewd investor." "Really?" "I didn't realize he shared my investment strategies," I said, throwing Arthur a death stare. He busied himself with a loose thread on his cuff. "He only said he was surprised by how large your portfolio was," she explained. "I guess I should guard my investments better, to keep them private," I said, seething. "He doesn't share his affairs with me, so I hoped he'd do the same with mine." "It was nice meeting you all, but I'd like to dance with my husband now." I set our drinks aside, grabbed Arthur's hand, and dragged him to the dance floor. "You better calm down, or you'll ruin both your marriage and my career," he hissed in my ear. "Act happy, or this night will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Be a professional." I took 3 deep breaths, just like my training taught me. I waited 60 seconds, then I smiled at him. "I didn't like you confronting me like that," he said. "I know," I replied. "But don't you ever share the details of my wealth with anyone. I don't trust anyone else with that information. And that includes you." That shocked him. "You don't really mean that, do you?" "How often do I lie to you, Arthur?" I asked. "How often do you lie to me?" he shot back. "I've never caught you in a lie," I said, not addressing his own honesty. One of the men from the circle touched my shoulder. "Can I dance with your husband?" "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm, "but tonight is special, and we won't be dancing with anyone else." He nodded and left. After a few songs, we returned to our table. I couldn't stand being there any longer. "I'm done here, Arthur. Are you coming home with me, or are you staying?" I asked. "I'm torn," he said, the picture of a devoted professional. "This is my job. There are people I need to spend time with." "But how will I get home?" he asked, playing the victim. "Call a cab. Or an Uber. Or get a room. You're a big boy. You make decisions every day. My decision is to go home. Your decision is what you will do here." "I hope we both make the right choices," I said. I had a strange look as I kissed his engagement ring. "I love you, baby." "I love you too," he replied. Mr. Papaz's microphone was in his suit pocket. I texted the PI to let him know Arthur was at the Hyatt and that we would soon get more information. He confirmed his equipment was in place and already collecting data. He didn't come home that night. It was nearly noon when he arrived via Uber, his suit wrinkled. He thanked me for being his wife and went upstairs to shower. I wondered when Hyatt rooms stopped having showers. I held my tongue as he said, "I'd like coffee and toast, and then I'm going to bed, if you don't mind." I placed the toast with his favorite jam on a plate for him. "What did you do after I left the dance?" I asked. He launched into a long, detailed story about dancing with some man named Dan Davis and talking to 20 or 30 people. He didn't say if he went to his own room or someone else's. He didn't say where he had breakfast. I knew I'd find out from Mr. Papaz. We met at his office at 10 a.m. on Monday. He offered me coffee, but I opted for water. If you don't mind, Judy, I'll outline what we found in chronological order, Mr. Pappas said, his voice grave. Using Arthur's cell phone locator, we discovered he had lunch at Ms. Meredith Cohen's high-rise. Later, he went to the 14th floor, to Brenda's real estate office, a subsidiary of Cohen's company. He took a deep breath. Here's a summary of our surveillance findings from the convention. On the phone, he told Brenda that he was disappointed in your participation and would rather be with her to eat, dance, and make love all night. He planned to pretend to be drunk and unable to drive home. My stomach clenched. Brenda made a derogatory remark about you, and he cut her off, reminding her not to berate you because you are his wife and he's using you for business connections. My God. In another call, Mr. Pappas continued, he said, I've made up my mind. You need $3 million for the new condominium. By selling part of that center, I can get the money from Judy and become an investor. She probably has more money stashed away. Brenda asked, where'd that nerd get all that money? He replied, if she has $3 million, that's $3 million more than you have. Let's put the divorce plan on hold until I find out her cash position. It might be better to stay married and control her money than to divorce and get half. At the convention, he told Meredith Cohen that you could fund the equity stake in the mall. After you left the dance, he invited Brenda to dance, saying, Judy has gone home, but she may have someone watching. We have to be careful. This will be our only dance tonight. I'll get a room and call you after midnight to come to my room. Mr. Pappas looked at me, his eyes full of pity. Mrs. Rogler. Judith. I'm not going to replay or repeat your husband's conversations with Brenda after midnight or the next morning. They're not something a wife should hear. They are your property, and you've paid for them, but I'll keep them in case you ever want to reconcile and listen to what he really thinks of you. Do you want to continue the surveillance? I sat there, frozen, the world tilting on its axis. Then, a cold, hard clarity washed over me. Please continue the surveillance for the next 2 weeks, and then stop, I said slowly, my voice devoid of emotion. And I want to listen to the recordings. I need to hear it all. Thank you for helping me stay sane and focused on my future. I left his office and drove. I don't know where I went. I just drove for hours, the recordings playing on a loop in my head. The betrayal was a physical thing, a shard of ice in my chest. When I finally went home, I was a different person. The loving wife was gone. The soldier had returned. I closed all my IRAs, knowing Judith Rogler would pay the taxes on the withdrawals and capital gains from the Merrill Lynch account. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy to the Wounded Warrior Project. I maxed out our joint credit cards to buy Krugerrands and traded my Corvette for Bitcoins. As Judith, I signed a power of attorney for Audrey Connors. I emptied and closed our safe deposit box. I began the slow, methodical process of transferring funds from the Swiss bank, the IRA, and Merrill Lynch to another, even more secure account in the Grand Caymans, leaving just enough money in our joint account to avoid suspicion. I moved all the valuables from the weapons safe to my secure vault, leaving only a flat box containing $1,000 and $20 bills. It was bait money. A tear gas canister was rigged to it. If Arthur opened it, he would get a face full of tear gas. I left the weapon safe combination on a piece of paper on my desk. Arthur, oblivious, subtly tried to convince me to invest in the mall. I told him to prepare a full analysis of the deal, a task that would keep him busy while I finalized my plans. I decided to relocate to Scottsdale, Arizona. I contacted a realtor and described what I wanted, a 4,000 square foot Adobe-style home with a pool, mountain views, and near a golf course. A cash sale, around $3 million. I no longer felt any love for Arthur. Only a burning, all-consuming desire for revenge. I told Arthur I had to go to DC for a week for work. Instead, I booked a flight to Phoenix to buy my new house. He didn't even offer to drive me to the airport, which only confirmed that he was eager for me to leave so he could be with his lover. In Phoenix, I opened new bank accounts as Audrey Connors. I transferred $4 million into them, $3 million from the Swiss account and $1 million from Grand Cayman. I bought the perfect house and arranged for the realtor to store some items for me securely in her office until I could move in. While I was gone, I monitored our house in Chicago via the motion-activated cameras. I saw no sign of a lover. Arthur was diligently working on the shopping center prospectus for me. I returned to Chicago with a smile on my face, my plan in full motion. He was actually waiting for me at the airport in his Audi. "Welcome home, my wonderful wife," he said, kissing me. "I've missed you." "Yes," I replied, my voice smooth as silk. "It's been a long trip." Early the next morning, I quietly got dressed and left the house. I couldn't stand to look at him or talk to him. I went to see Mr. Pappas, who was glad to see me and had important updates. He had recorded Arthur visiting Meredith Cohen's building, first going to Brenda's office, then to Meredith's. The three of them had discussed how they would use my money. "Cohen is very successful in real estate," Pappas explained, "but she lacks liquid capital. She needs your cash to avoid defaulting on some major loan payments, which could lead to foreclosures. Arthur wants to be a real estate mogul and is using Cohen as a springboard. If Cohen's empire collapses, he'll lose his chance and jeopardize his career, since he's the one who approved most of Cohen's loans at his bank." He paused. Now for some unpleasant information. He showed me a short video of the meeting. It was hard to watch. "This is more than you need to see," he said, turning it off. That evening, Arthur prepared dinner. He was being the perfect, attentive husband. "Would you like to review my prospectus tonight?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Would you like to present it, or should I just read it?" "Let me have a whiskey and get comfortable first," he said. He described the property well. He was a good salesman. He talked about a low debt-to-equity ratio and solid net rental income. But I knew something he didn't. I had used my own resources to discover that the anchor tenant, a major department store, was considering closing stores nationwide, which would devastate the mall's revenue. "Cohen needs the cash for a new luxury condo project," he added. "This is a great opportunity for us, Judith. Monthly cash flow, accelerated amortization." "Let me look at the numbers tomorrow," I said, feigning deep thought. "I might want to invest more than the $3 million you suggested." "Is that possible?" He was thrilled. The next day, I pretended to study his proposal. I called him at his office. "Would you mind if I showed this to my overseas business acquaintances?" I asked. "Yes, please show it," he said, thinking it would improve the deal. "I thought it would be better for us," I said, my voice sweet. "Define we. Are we a couple, or are we you and your lovers?" "I'll call my friends and see what I can do," he replied, completely missing my jab. "I totally love you," I mumbled, and spent the rest of the morning loading valuable items into a rented Cadillac Escalade for the drive to Scottsdale. I called Arthur and told him my friends loved the idea and I was flying to Phoenix to meet them in person. He was ecstatic. "How much money do you think you can raise?" he asked, his voice trembling with greed. "I could risk another $2 million of my own, making it $5 million total," I said. "Other participants might add another $5 million. "That would be perfect, Judy." "Just perfect," he squeaked. I booked a motel room in Kansas City to rest on the long drive. I hired a security company to watch over the car overnight. I bought a new weapon safe, the same model as the one in Chicago, and had it delivered to Audrey's new home. Sirius Radio was my only companion. The trip went smoothly, and I gathered the bare necessities for the new house. It felt so good to be away from Arthur and his schemes. A week later, I returned to Chicago and told Arthur that I had secured a $10 million package for myself and my friends. I spent the next 2 weeks setting up a shell LLC and another 3 weeks preparing and negotiating the investment documents. My goal was to stall until Meredith Cohen ran out of money. One morning, just before Arthur left for work, I delivered the final, convincing performance. "We're almost done with the paperwork," I told him. "We could sign as early as this week. But the deal won't finalize until the funds are in your bank. I want to discuss our future. I think you should stop working so hard for others. You can focus on our investments and enjoy life. Maybe we could even consider having children. What do you think?" "I like it, Judy. It would be great for us." "Thank you," he said, his eyes shining. He left the house happier than I had ever seen him. Later, I learned he went straight to Meredith Cohen's office and celebrated with her and Brenda. The next week, I signed the final papers at Cohen's office. Everyone congratulated each other, with Brenda and Cohen smirking at me behind Arthur's back. Meredith asked, "So, when's the money coming?" "We'll transfer all the funds from my account in Switzerland to your bank in one go," I replied smoothly. "It should arrive soon." I left for the Middle East the day after signing the documents. The money transfer would supposedly happen while I was out of the country. Judith Rogler left America for good, the last trace of her being a passport stamp at O'Hare International Airport. Back in the Middle East, in my secure compound, I checked the security cameras at home. There they were. Arthur was in our bed with Brenda. I smiled and set off the fire alarm. The chaos was beautiful to watch. The fire department spent an hour trying to locate the source of the alarm. Because of the time difference, Arthur and I kept missing each other on FaceTime. When we finally connected, his tone was cold. "When is the money coming?" "It's been over a week since the documents were signed," he growled. I laughed. "The money is deposited in my account, ready to transfer to the US. But the banks here are closed now. I'll send it tomorrow when they open." "What else is going on?" "Oh, nothing. Just work. I'm busy, so I gotta go." "Love you," he replied curtly. "Yeah, me too." "Bye," I said. That was the night Judith Rogler died. It was the perfect time for him to be alone in the house. I switched one of the emergency fire lights in the master bedroom to strobe mode and had a speaker ready in another room. I turned on the strobe light. He jumped up from the bed, confused. Then, I spoke through the speaker, my voice distorted, filled with panic. "Arthur! Arthur, help me! They're eliminating me! Please, help me! No, 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 no! I love you, Arthur!" Then the lights and the microphone went out. Silence. He was hysterical. Screaming, crying, sobbing, barely able to breathe. He rushed to the phone and called Brenda. "Brenda! Something's happened. I've completely lost my mind. Judy was being liquidated, and they were calling my name. It wasn't a dream. I'm so scared. Can you come here?" he pleaded. Her reply was cold as ice. "I'm a little busy right now. Since it was just a dream, it's no big deal. Have a glass of milk and go to bed, you idiot." He hung up. Just then, his phone rang. It was my old number. I let it ring. He had no other way to contact me. No contacts at all. He was blindsided and completely alone. What would he tell Cohen? Where was the money they had promised her? None of them knew the other parties in this deal except Judith. Without that $10 million, the Cohen conglomerate would collapse. I watched him on the camera as he sprawled in a large puddle of his own sweat and tears on the living room carpet. His plan to create a real estate empire had failed. He would likely be fired from the bank and lose all his sources of income. His bank salary didn't cover his lifestyle. My money did. He had $1 million house, but it was in both our names, and without my signature, he couldn't sell or mortgage it. He could live there, but it was an expensive house, with monthly taxes, utilities, and insurance. In Illinois, you can declare a person legally dead after 7 years of no contact, or 12 weeks with proof of passing away. Documented events, like an airplane crash or a massive fire, are needed. Neither the U.S. Army, the Marines, nor the Iraqi government would ever issue a death certificate for me. I had already asked my CIA supervisor to freeze my personnel file and deny any CIA contact with Judith Rogler, under the pretext of protecting my family from insurgent retaliation. Judith Rogler would cease to exist. Audrey Connors would take her place. Arthur would have to wait 7 years to sell the house. He didn't have the codes to my offshore accounts. The only money he had now was from the bank. I hated to part with the $1 million house, but I was still going to lose at least half of it in a divorce anyway. The remaining $500,000 was a big price to pay for my freedom, but it was worth it. I watched the drama unfold over the next few days as he clung to the desperate hope that I was still alive. Now, we were ready for the final act. Like many other servicewomen overseas, our husbands and boyfriends often cheated on us. When my Marine buddies at the compound found out about my problems, they were furious. They asked if they could help. Take care of someone for me. But I wanted something more lasting, and more fun for myself. The funniest part was that he had no idea that I knew he was a worthless cheat, and that I had orchestrated the entire collapse of his career and his friend's empire. I laughed at his impending financial crisis. We went outside the compound, to a place where we couldn't be seen. We set up 2 tables and covered them with a blue tarp. One of the Marines, dressed in tribal clothing, took an AK-47 from the weapons room and placed it on the table. I sat between the tables with only my head visible above the blue tarp that was wrapped around my neck. Chalk had been applied to my face to make it look gray. My lips were painted a dark blue, and my hair was salted with powder. Ketchup was splattered all over the table and around my neck. It looked like I had been decapitated, and the rebel was holding my head so it wouldn't roll off the table. We took several pictures from different angles. The best one was a straight-on shot, with my blue eyes staring, blank and empty. The Marines decided it was the perfect reprisal. 3 weeks later, 2 of my Marine buddies, now back in the States, went to Arthur's house and knocked on the door. Brenda opened it. "We've already given money to the Salvation Army," she said, and started to close the door. The closing of the door was interrupted by a size 11 combat boot. "We're here to see Mr. Arthur Rogler, about his wife." Arthur came to the door. "Please, come in," he said. The Marines were in their dress uniforms, but without name tags. My Marine buddies and I watched everything through the security camera I still had access to. "Are you Mr. Arthur Rogler?" one of the Marines asked. "Yes," Arthur replied, his voice trembling. "We have a picture of an American who was liquidated overseas. We think it might be your wife. This is our only method of identification, since we can't get DNA from a photo," the Marine explained solemnly. He handed Arthur the photograph. Arthur gasped and turned pale as a sheet. He immediately started sobbing. "No, no, no. Why her? We were going to start a family, she was going to quit her job. She called out to me the night she died. She told me she loved me. How can I live with myself, knowing what I did to her? He was a great actor, I'll give him that." Where are the rest of her body parts?" he asked, his crying gradually stopping. 30 bodies were dumped in a pit and bulldozed over. "The heads are stacked in a large pile outside the enemy compound," the Marine said, his voice flat and professional. Arthur began to vomit while sobbing uncontrollably. I wasn't sure if it was because he loved me, or because of the impending financial collapse he knew was coming. "We're sorry to have such bad news for you, sir. Would you like us to call someone for you?" the Marine asked. "No, thank you," he sobbed. As they walked out, one of the Marines picked up the picture and put it back in his briefcase. Across the block, they got in their car and laughed at the part they'd played in bringing him down. His wife had abandoned him and kept all her money. As they drove away, they could hear Brenda's shrill voice yelling from inside the house. "Where's our $10 million? What happened to the $10 million? How do we get our $10 million? We're all going bankrupt without it." Arthur was completely broken, screaming and crying in his now empty, expensive house. He was cut off, with no clues, no explanation. His grand plan was in ashes, and he was left alone with the terror I had created for him. If you're still listening, please help me by liking this video and commenting with the number 1 below, so I know you're this amazing, and I understand you're with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please comment with the number 1 so I can see you, and now, listen as I continue my story. The final act was yet to play out. The story of my death was the final piece of the puzzle, the move that put him in checkmate. Meredith Cohen's empire collapsed in a spectacular fashion. She declared bankruptcy, and the fallout took down several smaller investors with her. Arthur was fired from the bank, of course. The anonymous package I had sent to the board of directors, containing the recordings and evidence of his fraudulent loan approvals, had seen to that. He was facing a mountain of legal trouble, not just from the bank, but from the IRS. A few weeks later, my 2 Marine friends, dressed again in their impeccable uniforms, paid him one last visit. They found him in a shabby, run-down apartment he was now forced to rent. Brenda was there, her face twisted with rage, screaming at him. My friends didn't need to act. They simply delivered an official-looking letter, a fake one we had created, from the Department of Defense. It formally expressed condolences for the loss of Sergeant Judith Rogler and stated that due to the circumstances of her death, her files were now sealed under national security protocols. It also mentioned that all her assets, including any inheritance, were frozen pending a 7-year investigation. This was the legal nail in the coffin, ensuring he could never touch the house or any other asset linked to my name. They handed him the letter and the final, gruesome photograph. As they left, they heard the sounds of a final, bitter argument, the sound of 2 rats trapped on a sinking ship, tearing each other apart. That was the last I ever saw or heard of them. And me? Or rather, Audrey Connors, was thousands of miles away. I was sitting at a small cafe, overlooking the deep blue of the Mediterranean Sea. The sun was warm on my face. I took a sip of my coffee and watched the waves roll in. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't listening for footsteps in the dark. When they were sinking in the wreckage they had created, I was watching the sunrise over the ocean. For the first time in so many years, I felt truly safe. I hadn't found my safe harbor in a house, or in a man. I had built it for myself. And I was finally free. And so, as the waves of the Mediterranean carried her burdens away, we are left to reflect on the deeper truths of this extraordinary journey. This is not just a story of betrayal and revenge, but a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit. It reminds us that self-worth is not defined by others but by the courage to stand up for ourselves, even in the face of heartbreak and deceit. Life's trials may push us to the edge, but they also reveal the resilience we never knew we possessed. Through our actions, we see the importance of reclaiming power, of valuing our own dignity, and of building a life that is ours alone. It teaches us that walking away from toxicity isn't weakness, it's an act of self-love. And while revenge may feel satisfying, true freedom comes from letting go, moving forward, and creating a future that reflects our highest potential. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between holding on or setting yourself free? Share your thoughts below, or simply comment good if this lesson resonated with you. Let's celebrate the strength we all carry within.